The Boston Red Sox and New York Yankees have put their differences aside and have agreed to a huge trade to go ahead and start a fire at what has been a very slow winter meetings, as outfielder Alex Verdugo is heading to the Bronx in exchange for 3 right-handed pitchers in the Yankees minor league system. There's been some rumors that Verdugo is going to end up in the Bronx, but you don't often see trades between the Yankees and Red Sox. There hasn't been a big deal from them since 2014 when Kelly Johnson and Steven Drew got swapped, but the Yankees were in dire need of a left-handed hitter, and that's exactly what Verdugo is for them. A good left-handed hitter will be a nice bottom-of-the-lineup guy. There's already some rumors swirling that maybe Verdugo could be part of a bigger trade to acquire Juan Soto, but that'll have to be seen at a later point. The Padres might still want to contend, and if so, Verdugo would be an interesting piece, but for now, the Yankees have Verdugo services, and that's what we're going to go off of in this video. And in this video, we're going to go ahead and explore this trade in its full extent, looking at what Alex Verdugo provides to the Yankees and also looking at what the Red Sox got in return, because they did get a pretty solid prospect and a couple other interesting pieces in this deal from the Yankees. Before we begin, it'd mean a lot if you can go ahead and hit that baseball down there or go to the link in the description to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot, it helps my channel grow and give you more awesome baseball content, not only from me, but from really awesome content creators out there as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and look at this Alex Verdugo trade that just dropped a couple hours ago and see exactly how both teams have fared and what I think each team is going to end up getting out of this deal. Alex Verdugo was a very big part of the deal that sent Mookie Betts from Los Angeles to Boston. He was a top prospect, and although he didn't meet his full potential in Los Angeles, it was very clear that there was a lot of potential for him to be a budding star, and is part of the reason why he was a big piece in that Mookie Betts deal, as I already mentioned. Verdugo was picked in the second round of the 2014 MLB draft by the Los Angeles Dodgers and was quickly a top prospect. Although he was never their best prospect, which is hard to do in the Dodger system as they are always completely loaded with prospect talent. They're one of the best talent evaluators in the entirety of Major League Baseball. He was always near the top, and there was little doubt that he'd be at least a solid player in Major League Baseball in his future. He made his Major League debut in 2017, playing in 15 games, and made a couple more appearances in 2018, playing in 37 games before really sticking on full-time in 2019, appearing in 106 games in his only full season in a Dodger uniform. Verdugo looked really good in 106 games for the Dodgers, with a .294 batting average and OPS plus of 113, so he's about 13% better than league average is what that stat represents. He hit 12 home runs, stole a couple bags, and was overall a good player. The biggest part of his game, as you could probably see just based off of the last end of my little stat bubble right there, is that he does not strike out a lot, only 13% of the time in 2019, and still walked 6.9% of the time, which is really, really good. The fact that you can keep those strikeout numbers low and those walk numbers high means he has incredible plate discipline, and that's something that is really exciting in a young player. At that time, he was only 23, and things were looking really good. He didn't have super elite exit velocities, but he was still someone who seemed to have a lot of potential, and that's what the Red Sox were really looking for. Verdugo's best year was by far 2020. In the pandemic-shortened season, he played in 93 games and slashed a very respectable 308, 367, 478 for 123 OPS plus and finished 12th in AL MVP voting. Although he had a little bit less defensive versatility as he did before, in previous seasons he played all over the outfield, now he kind of stuck mostly to the corner outfield. He put together a very good offensive season coupled with some really stellar defense, and it looked like Boston had really gotten a good player out of this deal. It's hard to look at Mookie Betts and say you can replace him, but during that season Verdugo did a decent enough job replicating his production, and with some other pieces in that deal, there was definitely the potential that the Red Sox got at least some good players that could somewhat supplement the loss of Mookie Betts in this acquisition. But we'll learn to find out later, maybe that wasn't necessarily the case. Fast forward a bit to 2023, and Verdugo's production has started to fall off a little bit. His batting average and on-base percentage have declined steadily over the past couple seasons since 2020, and it just seemed like the Red Sox were looking to go in a different direction. 2023 just wasn't Verdugo's best year. He was a league average hitter. His 100 OPS plus shows that pretty well. His batting average, slugging, on base percentage were all a little lower, and it wasn't like there was a huge drop in BABIP either that goes to account for that. It wasn't like he was hitting the ball harder or had more ground balls. The underlying stats just show that he just had a down year. That probably reduced his value a little bit, but I actually think that the Yankees gave up a little bit too much for him. We'll get to that in a little bit though. Verdugo is still a solid player, and I want to make sure that's crystal clear. I think he's a good player, and he's still very young. He'll be 28 going into the 2024 season, and the Yankees have a lot of flexibility with him. Although he only played right field in 2023, there's some options for him to go ahead and be a very good player for the Yankees in the future, and if he is a part of the Juan Soto trade, I think the Yankees will be very happy to have him included there. But if he stays, good for him. He's a good player, and I think a lot will improve in that regard. His defensive value also took a very big step up from 2022 to 2023. He registered a negative D-WAR in 2022 and then turned that into a positive in 2023. So if Verdugo does end up becoming a plus defender, good things are bound to happen, and the Yankees will be very happy to have him in their services. And if not, and he's part of like a Juan Soto trade, things will work out just fine. But for the Yankees, I think this is a very solid addition and someone that Yankees fans should be content with having on their team. Now let's take a moment to examine what the Yankees gave up in this deal and what the Red Sox are acquiring. The biggest name by far is right-handed pitcher Richard Fitts, who has the potential to be a very solid player in the major leagues. Fitts attended Auburn University and was a reliever there the first couple years before becoming a starter during fall practice as a junior and quickly became a very solid piece. There was even some discussion about him going in the first round, but in March, near the end of the college baseball season, he ended up hurting his foot, and that allowed him to slide all the way down to pick 183, the 6th round of the 2021 MLB draft, where he got taken by the Yankees. He signed for just under $350,000, which is above slot in the 6th round, and that's mostly because he could have went back to Auburn for his senior year and probably improved his draft stock a little bit. He sat out all of 2021 due to that injury, and most pitchers do. They don't normally make a debut in their year that they get drafted, so nothing too major about that. He didn't do a great job in Single A in 2022 when he made his pro debut, but simply believing in him and because he is a little bit old for the class, he got bumped up to High A and did a really good job recording a .055 ERA and a 38-3 strikeouts to walk ratio across 33 innings to end the 2022 campaign. His best pitch is probably his fastball. It can reach 97 miles an hour, has a little bit of natural cut and ride, and has some decent vertical break that can give a lot of carry when it's thrown up in the zone. It's probably a plus pitch, and that's something that any team wants to have. He also has a really good slider that has a lot of sweep, and that can give him a lot of flexibility in a pretty much two-pitch mix. He has a solid changeup, but it's nothing to write home about. It's probably an average pitch, and is more of a change of pace thing than anything. He really does kind of just throw that fastball and slider more than anything, and those are the two pitchers you have to be on the lookout for as a player going against him in the batter's box. This is especially true because you can kind of tell he doesn't fully trust his changeup, and once he gets a little bit more confident in that, things will end up working out a little bit better for him. And chances are it will, because he has really good control, and that's something that can actually help him stay as a starter. Oftentimes when you see people with a two-pitch mix and a kind of iffy third pitch, you see them end up in the bullpen, but that also tends to go with control. Location is just as important as break, and if you can go ahead and locate a pitch, things can make a world of difference, and the fact he has above average control bodes well for him in the future. As not saying he's going to be a starter, and he could be a nice mid-leverage guy if that potential's not. He pitched all of 2023 in Double-A for 11-5 record, a 3.48 ERA, and struck out a decent number of batters, 163 across 152 and 2/3 innings pitched. His batting average was a little bit high, 227 against, so maybe he can bring that down a little bit, but there's still a lot of potential. I think he slots into that maybe 10 or 15 range on the Red Sox top 50 prospect list, and I think that's a fair place for him to be. He's not someone I think would be a top-of-the-line starter, but there's definitely potential to see him as a 2 or 3 starter, potentially at the end of 2024 or beginning of 2025. Who knows what the Red Sox are doing with players like Tanner Houck and a bunch of other players like Garrett Whitlock, who they've kind of thrown into the rotation. So getting someone like Fitts up there will be an interesting play to see exactly what the Red Sox will end up doing. The next player we'll talk about is Nicholas Judice, who was the 8th round pick by the New York Yankees in this year's 2023 MLB draft. You might be asking yourself why I am talking about an 8th round pick in this year's draft, but there's a lot of potential that Judice shows that could make him a very interesting piece going forward, and is why the Red Sox were interested in acquiring him from their division rivals. The biggest thing is that he had a huge amount of improvement from 2022 to 2023, especially with just his stuff in general. His fastball in 2022 averaged 87 miles an hour, while this year in 2023 it reached up to 100 miles an hour, averaging around 91 to 95 per start. That's a huge jump, and he has a very large frame at 6'8", 230 pounds that can create a very weird art angle and can get his heater on batters a lot faster than they expect because he can get a lot of reach away from the mound. With a huge frame, really long arms, that's a very weird delivery for batters to deal with, and that's something that they're going to have to compensate for as they go ahead and face a guy like Judice. He was also ranked as the 175th prospect coming into this draft by MLB Pipeline. He didn't pitch after getting acquired, again, as most pitchers do when they get drafted, simply to work on their arm with so many injuries. But the Louisiana Monroe product has a lot of potential. Again, that fastball is definitely a plus pitch. He has a good slider, and his changeup is a little bit weak, but he's working on that to get a third pitch in. He only started 1 year at Louisiana Monroe, so there's a chance that he probably ends up in the bullpen. But if he can go ahead and master that changeup and get a little bit more accessibility with his slider and fastball in terms of location, it's about average right now. He could be a very good back-end starter, or potentially even a good reliever in a high leverage role. He probably best tracks as a 2-pitch reliever using his fastball and slider, maybe a changeup as a rare change of pace pitch, but I think that's probably how it's going to end up, simply because those are his 2 best pitches and his changeup really isn't great right now. So if he can do that, it'll be a solid addition by the Red Sox, and if he can slot in a high leverage role, things will definitely work out well for him. The last player in this deal we'll talk about is right-handed reliever Greg Weissert, who has already made his major league debut for the Yankees. He hasn't been used very often. He only has a 4.6 ERA so far in his career across 29 games. He strikes out about 9 batters per 9, so a batter an inning, which is pretty okay for a reliever. It's definitely not a high leverage guy, but it's good enough. His whip is relatively low at .1277, but it took a massive jump from 2022 to 2023, which is not a good thing. It rose by almost 0.5, which is kind of scary as he allowed a lot more hits. He isn't walking a ton of guys, which is a very good sign, but he still needs to improve on it a little bit to be a reliable reliever. This is someone that the Red Sox probably think they can unlock something with. I'm not going to say that they can or can't, but there's just not a ton of potential here, and I don't really see exactly what the Red Sox were going for. I think he's a solid reliever and is probably just a throw-in piece to clear off a 40-man roster spot that the Red Sox are willing to take a flyer on, but for me, it just doesn't move the needle. He's an okay player. He's better than I will ever be, and I will give him full credit for that, but it's just not a player that if I was a Red Sox fan, I'm excited about, and in my opinion is probably the lowest rung on this deal, but you never know. Sometimes a player that you don't expect it becomes the best player in an acquisition deal. So now that I've talked about everyone, let's kind of go ahead and revisit this trade and see exactly what I would grade each deal. Now granted, I'm going to phrase the Yankees a little bit differently, that this grade will be very different if Alex Verdugo goes from them to the San Diego Padres in a Juan Soto trade or another big acquisition that they make. That grade will be most likely a lot higher because I'd be much more content with that being included in a bigger trade for Juan Soto than I would for this current deal, which is why I'm going to give them a C+. Verdugo's a good player. He was someone I was very, very excited about when he was coming up and someone I thought was going to be a superstar. Obviously that hasn't turned out, but he's a good player. The Yankees desperately need a left-handed hitter, and that's exactly what he fulfills. There's still a lot of players left on the market, such as Juan Soto via trade, Cody Bellinger or Jock Peterson in free agency. So there's a lot of options that they can if they do end up trading Alex Verdugo to acquire that, but I'm not hating on them for going ahead and getting a left-handed bat from their division rival, no less. I think there's a lot to be excited about potentially for him, especially because he's only going to be 28, so there's a lot of time for him to still grow, and if you have a Garrett Cole who's going to be 33, I believe, in 2024, Aaron Judge entering his prime, you're not going to want to waste those years. And although Verdugo isn't going to move the needle a ton, it's a way to go ahead and address a weakness in your lineup, and I never want to fault teams for addressing a weakness. Is it who I think the answer is? Probably not, but I think he's good enough that I'm not going to go ahead and say this is a bad trade for the Yankees. I don't love it, but I definitely don't hate it, and I'll get to why I don't love it right here, as I officially give the Red Sox a B+, and I think primarily that is for Richard Fitts. I think Fitts is a very good player and has a really decent floor and a pretty decent ceiling. You don't often get that with prospects, and although he did struggle in 2022 a little bit, he put up really good numbers in AA, and AA is a very hard jump to get from high A or single A to AA. So the fact he's able to do that was very promising, although he was a little bit old for that class. I'm not super worried. I think there's a lot of potential for him, and to get someone like Judice, who is a good player, drafted a little bit late in 2023, but has some decent potential, I think is a very good thing, and is something that if I'm the Red Sox, I see him as a potential good middle leverage guy who can make an impact. In terms of Weissert, it's a player that they could try and unlock, and I never try and write people off, but Weissert is not someone who I'm really excited about, but if the Red Sox think Greg Weissert has some value to them, then he has value to them. So thank you again for watching this video. It really means a lot. Please go ahead and hit either one of those 2 videos in the top right corner or bottom right corner to watch more videos from me. And there's that baseball right there in the middle to subscribe. You can also do that by hitting the link down in the description. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next video.